Hey everybody, Guy here from Chit Chat. Thanks for continuing to listen. I just got done recording a really fun podcast with Larry Logeman. Larry has been running a business here in town called Executive Express. There's a good chance that you've probably used Executive Express at some point over the years, helping you get to the airport. Larry and I got to talk a little bit about that, and we got to talk a lot about his story and why he loves volunteering. Also, a little bit about how his cancer journey and his volunteerism kind of led him to being the chair this upcoming year for Holly-Ball. Switchboard got to be involved this past year for the 50th annual Holly-Ball, and we had a really, really, really incredible time. And the fact that over $1 million was raised for the Child Advocacy Center was incredible. And on top of all that, it was just a fun night being with our team and so many other people in our community. Yeah, so it was a really, really fun time. Larry's going to be the chair of that this upcoming year. So we got to talk all about that and just kind of the role that Holly-Ball has played in our community for over 50 years. So thanks again for listening, everybody. Excited for you to hear now. Larry, thanks so much for coming and joining us on the podcast. Great to be with you today.
I'm excited to be here.
You and I have met a couple times over the years. I've had the opportunity of hearing you speak on a few occasions. I think one of my favorite ones was as I went through the Chamber Leadership Program last year in the last cohort. You came and spoke to our group at the beginning and at the end, which was really, really great. So I've got to hear your story a little bit. But in case some of our viewers don't know who you are, would you just tell us who you are? Tell us a little bit about what you do here in St. Cloud.
Well, I'm Larry Logeman, and I own Executive Express.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this spring is my 20-year anniversary of ownership.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Prior to that, I was involved in some pretty public executive level positions, so very involved in the community now for 30 plus years. And it's really been a great blessing to be here. I was born and raised in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I went to a small college in Iowa, and it happened to be the smallest town I ever lived in, but it was the biggest town my future wife ever lived in. And so St. Cloud was the perfect compromise when we got here. But yeah, we've loved every minute of being here. We're enjoying the different things that we do in the community, and I'm very involved in a lot of volunteerism.
Yeah, it's good. Real quick, Chicago. Are you a Cubbies guy or a White Sox guy?
Cubbies all the way.
All right.
Cubbies all the way.
Where's the line? Like, is there a geographic line, or is it an ethos? Like, what's the difference between a Cubs and a White Sox fan?
It's geographic first and foremost.
Yeah.
But then there is just an allegiance, and for whatever reason, my father was a diehard White Sox fan.
Okay.
I just grew up. We were in a suburb on the northwest side of the city, and the Cubs are on the north side, and the White Sox are on the south side, and it just turned out that way.
Was he sad?
Was he sad
when you became a Cubs fan? Did it break his heart? No,
not at all.
Okay.
I think he wasn't that.
All right.
Diehard where he was obsessed with it, but it was fun through the years, and it's been very interesting. Then now I've spent 35 years here in Minnesota. Never, ever, ever thought I would change that allegiance, but one day I have some friends that have season tickets to the Twins, and he always invited me when the Cubs came to town. And one day I was at a Cubs-Twins game in Minneapolis, and the Twins got a great hit or home run, and I started cheering, and my friend was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, it just kind of happened.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Do you have a Twins cap?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So it actually happened.
Oh, yeah. I have Twins jersey. I have a Joe Mauer jersey.
Of course. The best. Yeah. Well, great. And what year did you and your wife move to St. Cloud?
We were married in the summer of 1990.
Okay.
And so we actually never lived in the same town except from college. Yeah. And then 3 years later when we were married. Huh. So we were married in July of 90 and actually moved in here in the fall of 90.
Okay. And what ultimately brought you to St. Cloud?
Interesting story. If my wife was here, she'd be punching me in the arm.
All right. I could do it for her. I mean, I'll be the judge of that. If I deem it punchable, I'll just reach across and give your shoulder a little
where I went to college, Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. Well over 50% of the alumni eventually end up in the Twin Cities. It's the largest metro market north of Decorah, Iowa. And so when I graduated college, I actually went back to Chicago, and it only lasted 6 months. I wanted to be in Minneapolis. Huh. So I had, 3 suits and 100 resumes, and I had a car, and I drove to Minneapolis to look for work.
Yeah.
So I was here first. My wife was 1 year younger than me in school. And she, when she graduated from Luther, she wanted to teach and she did a little like hour circle around Minneapolis. And her first interview was in Foley, Minnesota.
Okay.
And
which Foley may be her speed, if she really likes a small town.
Yep. She came up and interviewed, but she did find out that a lot of people that teach in Foley live in St. Cloud.
Okay.
I was down in Bloomington. I was in the hotel business. And so that's when we started. When we got serious and we knew we were going to be married, we were going to be one of those people that lived halfway in between.
Okay.
We were going to live in Monticello. And we went and looked around that. But I really knew this was not going to be good because we weren't going to be a part of a community.
Yeah.
So I was working at a hotel in Bloomington, and I'm the one that bit the bullet and said, I'll commute. Let's live in St. Cloud. And that drive was horrible.
Yeah.
And
you start looking real quick.
Yeah, it didn't last very long, and I was connected to St. Cloud and started working in the hotel business here.
And then how did you end up with Executive Express? Did you start Executive Express or did you acquire it?
I acquired it. It actually started in 1979. That's another great story, another podcast. Remind me about the stories of entrepreneurism.
Deal.
I would love to do that. I had been, the general manager of the Radisson, director of sales and marketing for Central Minnesota Group Health Plan, some pretty public positions. And I felt I was doing well, but I was making money for other people.
Sure.
And not necessarily myself. And especially in the corporate world, no matter how good you are, you have no control. You could lose your job at any time due to being fired, due to a merger, whatever it is. And I just really felt the calling to be a business owner. And what helped, getting back to the St. Clair Leadership Program, I had gone through a training to become a licensed facilitator for Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was while I was doing all those trainings and writing my own vision statement, I'm like, this isn't right. I need to be in control. So I really wanted to be a business owner, but funny, I had no money. And that's a challenge. How do you buy a business or start a business when you're young, have little babies, and you have no money? So it was just a leap of faith. I really felt strong. It was something I needed to do. It was very scary for my wife when I told her, we're going to leave the stability, and it just worked out. And ultimately, it wasn't an Executive Express that I was necessarily interested in. I just wanted to be a business owner.
Yeah.
And it eventually led me to Executive Express. I knew the owner from another community relationship, and it just kind of worked out that I bought this small little business. And then I'm like, okay,
let's go.
This isn't going to work. We got to grow it fast. And that was a lot of fun to do that.
Cool. When I was thinking, I need to have Larry on the podcast, it was while I was at Holly-Ball this past year. For a number of years, I've kind of felt the itch of like, I think I should go to Holly-Ball. I think it's time. I think I'm old enough. I think, whatever kind of metric I needed to get to, like it was time to go to Holly-Ball. But that was I had that thought first in 2019. Okay. And it was like, I'm going to go to the next Holly-Ball. And then the next Holly-Ball didn't happen.
Well, it happened virtually.
Well, right. And anyway, so it just, we went a few more years and I didn't think about it much. And then this past year we had the opportunity to jump in and shoot photos and video and really kind of be involved in the 50th. And so while I was there and I saw you there, well, I was setting up some time-lapse cameras, and at literally every single time that I showed up, just like stopping by to make sure in the week leading up to it, to make sure that the cameras were doing well, you were there every single time. And I was like, oh, Larry would be a great person to have on the podcast. So I kind of want, if you're up for it, I want to talk to you about Holly-Ball. Sure. I joke. I mean, I'm not the only one. I've heard other people say it too, but Holly-Ball is the adult prom of Central Minnesota. But it's also so much more. And I was this year, I knew it was great. I'd seen photos and I'd heard some of the stories about how much money gets raised for our community. I had this kind of peripheral knowledge of all of that. But this year, being able to experience all of that was really, really fun. Our whole team went, and we had a blast together. Would you just tell me a little bit about Holly-Ball? This past year was the 50th anniversary of Holly-Ball.
Yes.
And so maybe just give me the little flyover of like, what have the last 50 years kind of been like, and what does Holly-Ball mean for our community? And then, if you wouldn't mind, as the chair, where are we going? What's kind of happening with Holly-Ball?
Big question with lots and lots of stories. Obviously, we just went through the 50th anniversary. And so for any of the listeners of this, they should go and watch the video that was done on the history of Holly-Ball. It takes about 20 minutes, but it's really interesting. And so, I mean, Holly-Ball started off as, really some of the important females in the community, were trying to like, what can we do? We need to just have an event. And so, there were a few women that got together and came up with this idea. It wasn't called Holly-Ball at the time. It was just, let's get together for this kind of winter formal type of a thing. And I just think one of the most interesting stories is literally the Thursday before the Holly-Ball, they only had 50 tickets sold. And so these volunteers, these women, started door knocking on the businesses of downtown St. Cloud and said, this is what we're doing. You got to buy a ticket. And I can't remember the exact number, but they got up to like 400 people in a few days.
That's a big swing.
It was a big swing. It was a big swing. And, that first Holly-Ball was known for buying a small piece of medical equipment that the St. Cloud Hospital needed.
Yeah.
And the rest is history is too cliche because it was a lot of work and through a lot. Nobody knew necessarily it was going to be this annual event, but enough people just kept stepping forward and trying to create a unique, and that's a great phrase, the adult prom. Even back then, it was a in the dark of winter, just to dress up and go out.
To go get gussied up.
Yeah, go get gussied up, go out and have some fun.
Yeah.
And there always has been the element of raising funds for, at the time, was specifically the St. Cloud Hospital. That was way before the word Centricare ever came around, or the Centricare Foundation. It was just local volunteers raising money. And I started going. I became the general manager of the Radisson in 1990, and my guess is I went the first time in 1990, maybe 91. It was at the Holiday Inn at the time, and it was a very different event back then. It was all about the trees. I mean, they had, it was called the Tree Festival. And what a unique way to raise money. They went to the community, and local businesses would sponsor a tree, and they would decorate it however they wanted. Well, then the night of Holly-Ball, those trees were auctioned off, and that's how they raised money.
Sure.
And I remember at times that it got to be such a big deal at the Holly-Ball. There was, two rooms at the Holiday Inn. There was the main ballroom where the dinner was, but outside of that, in the hallway and the pool area, was where the trees were and the kind of the bars were. Well, you ended up having, then it got to be two seatings, and you waited in line for 2 hours out in the hallway to finally go and get a seat at the Holly-Ball. And then eventually, of course, it changed, and the St. Cloud Civic Center was built, and it was moved. Controversial, how these volunteers thought they should move it, how expensive it was going to be. But all of those decisions are hard at the time, but when you look back on things, it was a natural progression. Yeah. I would love it to say that there's going to be a day that the current River's Edge Convention Center becomes too small. Well, there's no other place at this point that's as big, but it just kind of kept growing from there. So I, in the 1990s, as a young professional in town, similar to maybe thoughts that you had, this was just a party. And to be very honest with you, there were lots of times, to me, it was just another event. And in this community, there are lots of charity events. There's always things to go to. And as my wife, who I love her dearly, she would say many times, I might have been grumpy, got to get ready for volleyball. But once I was there, it was always a fantastic time.
Yeah.
So we went to volleyball for all these years. Actually, way back when, the only times I didn't go to volleyball is when I was volunteering outside in the cold. My Sertoma Club, St. Cloud Area Sertoma Club, we did the valet parking as a fundraiser for our club.
Yeah.
We just did it for tips. And we were out in the snow and cold in tuxedo hats, all these Sertomans running around being valet parkers, So when I was doing that, I wasn't inside during the volleyball those years. But then, always went back to it. And then, it's just a community thing. As a community member of this business community, it is something that everybody should go to.
Yeah.
We all need to support because we are the recipients of healthcare in this community. So anything that is raised is only coming back to help us in the long run. But with all that, it changed for me dramatically 6 years ago. And that's when I had cancer. And I went through my treatment program at the Cobra Cancer Center. It was an extremely scary time of my life. My wife was incredible as my caregiver. She's a big part of my whole theme for this year coming up, about being a bridge between me as the patient and the rest of all of the oncologists and the staff. It's very scary going through. And so she was at my side and helped me through that. Anyway, so then the year after that is when the volleyball volunteers and people, they asked me if I would be an MC. I ended up being a co-MC with a dear friend of mine named Mark Sanderson, who owned this company called Wilkie Sanderson, and he was also a cancer survivor. And that night at volleyball, I was watching everybody, and there were so many people like you and me when we were younger. It was a party. It was an event. And I was watching all of them, and we're getting ready for the fund and need portion. And it suddenly hit me that I needed to kind of get people's attention. And I said, hello, everyone. Knock, knock, knock. This is real. You are at an event, but this is real life. I mean, we are raising money to help all of us in this community. Do some of you even know why you're here? And I don't mean it to be cold and crap, but it was kind of a blunt way to say, this isn't just another event. This is real stuff. And the fund and need tablet started going around, and we raised a lot of money, and they must have liked what I said. And I've just been involved ever since. And then it was a great, interesting story, because you may know this, and some of the people that are listening to this, for 50 years, there's never been a man that has been the chair of volleyball.
Really?
Never. I'm the first man.
Next year?
Next year.
Wow.
I am the first. It's always been women. And we owe a lot of thanks to Marie Sanderson. So when Mark was standing on stage with me, and we were doing this emceeing, Marie is sitting in the audience, and Mark and Marie have been very blessed in their business, and they have been the entertainment sponsors for 10, 15 years. And so she's been involved, and she's helped out do some things, and then she was eventually asked to be chair. So she was chair, and then she was the vice chair to Melinda Tam of Miss Melinda's Dance Studio. And they did a phenomenal job. And I was sitting next to Marie the night of her night that she was going to become chair now, and she was nervous. And then she needed to kind of get a vice chair. And one day she called me for a cup of coffee, and I would have a cup of coffee with her anytime.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was about volleyball, but she did ask me if I would be her vice chair, and I was stumped. I'm like, what? Men can't be a vice chair. She said, yeah, we talked about it. It's never happened before, but if there's going to be a man, I want it to be you, Larry. I'm like, okay. So I said yes.
That's great.
I didn't know that I was saying yes to hundreds of volunteer hours, but anyway, that
I think you did a little bit.
What's that?
I think you did a little bit.
Oh, I knew it was a big task. Yeah. And it is an important role, and the people that have had it, the community has a lot of people that have been blessed that have some flexible time, because you need to be, you have to have some flexible time, to be helping out this event that takes an entire year.
Yeah.
I mean, the Holly Ball was December 7th. Last week we had our wrap-up meetings from and next week we start this year.
Yeah.
So we already start the process.
Yeah. And who did you pick for your vice chair?
I picked Dan Barth. We're going to have 2 men in a row.
All right.
Dan Barth of Pioneer, what is Dan's business?
DMR. Diversified Media
I've known
Resources.
Dan for many, many years, and he has been really involved and done a fantastic job with Holly Ball, and also has experienced cancer in his life with his partner. And not that you need to have that to be a chair, but I just really thought he deserves this. He's been behind the scenes for so long, and he's so fun.
Yeah,
we're going to have so much fun together.
Yeah.
So when I asked him, he again had to think twice about it. Wait a minute, I thought it was just going to be a man-woman thing or something.
Sure.
No, Dan, this is going to work. So he took a few days to think about it, and he accepted. So
cool.
Next week we begin our kind of chair and vice chair thing.
Dan has been a tenant at Cooper Collective, our co-working space, for he was our first tenant.
Yeah.
Like 12 years. I've known Dan, so working alongside him in that space, he's a very, very, very good pick.
Yeah.
Well done with that.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so it's been 50 years of growth and volunteerism and support and raising money. What's next? It felt like there was like this big push, like the 50th is this big kind of like corner that needs to get turned. And now as we head into the next stage of Holly Ball, year 51, what do you think is coming?
That's a really good question, and somewhat of a little bit of anxiety for me. It's been a joke for the last year, and all the volunteers have heard me say this, that come on, people, there is going to be a 51st and a 52nd and a 61st and a 70th. We need to keep this going, because you could just see there's been this momentum building to the 50th year that it'd be natural to have a little bit of a letdown. And I'm like, but not on my watch, people. No. So I'm going to soon be meeting with one-on-one with the key volunteers. There's been some feelers out there, or maybe some rumors that people have they've been doing this for 20 years and they worked hard up to the 50th and now they're going to relax. No.
Maybe they wanted to be done 2 years ago, but they're like, I can't be done before the 50th.
Right.
I got to hold on just a couple more.
Yeah. So for all of you out there that are listening, I'm coming for you.
That's good.
Make sure that you stay on board. It's just too important of an event. And
why is it important?
Well, again, for me personally, as a cancer survivor, there are so many ancillary things, especially with going through my treatment at the Coburn Cancer Center. There are so many other things that are out there that insurance doesn't pay for. Yeah. And the Coburn Cancer Center really has got things figured out that this is a total mind, body, spiritual experience to get through this whole thing. So the healing center, music therapy, art therapy, all these different types of things that people need in that journey. Some don't use for a while, but support groups and different things. Insurance isn't paying for that.
Yeah.
And then just this past year now, we just had this great story, Chief of Police Jeff Oxton, and talking about his journey from starting the Central Minnesota Sexual Assault Center and Child Advocacy Center. And what a great story it was. And suddenly it became real. I mean, there are real people in our community that have been affected by these tragic situations. And again, there's just so many of the ancillary things that it's not paid for by other things. They're going to provide services to people in need no matter what. Yeah. And so it's things like Holly Ball that raise all that extra money, and for the hospice program and different tools that Holly Ball raised money for this incredible new piece of software, like an app that was needed for people to get through and families to get through that hospice journey. That's not paid for other than through donations like this. So the need is there.
Yeah.
Our community is growing. Therefore, there's that many more patients, and there's more need for more support groups and more art therapy, whatever the case may be. So we have to continue to raise this money.
Yeah. And, to our listeners, if you're unfamiliar with kind of how Hollyball works, there are 3 main nonprofits or organizations that money gets raised, that they're trying to raise money for. One is who we raised money for this past year, the Child Advocacy Center. This upcoming year, the primary recipient of those funds is the Coburn Cancer Center. And then in the 3rd year, it's the hospice,
Correct.
the hospice center. And then it flips over again. And it just kind of keeps rotating through those 3. So each year there's kind of a primary recipient. And so, which is neat as we head into this year of it being the Coburn Cancer Center, that you, a recipient or, a guest, a patient of the center, gets to kind of be kind of at the helm of helping raise all that money, and more than raising the money, but just championing support and getting people more involved. That's really, really great.
Yeah.
Maybe what's one thing that you want people to know? Maybe it could be about maybe the cancer journey, like having walked through that yourself, or about the Coburn Cancer Center that maybe people don't know.
Well, first of all, if people don't know what it's like to be either a cancer patient or a caregiver, good for you. What a great blessing that is, that you don't know that. Because if you've gone through it, it's hard to explain how difficult it is. In my journey, I have 5 children. They were grown 6 years ago. I mean, teenagers on through adulthood. And I also was a business owner. And I had to play this tough guy thing. Like, don't worry anybody. I'm still going to work every day. I'm still going to help do what I need to do for this family. And I look back on it now, how wrong I did that. I didn't get enough sleep. I went back to work too early. And it wasn't until I really started talking to people during my journey and through support groups at the Cancer Center, COVID came into the world and affected some things like that. But I just keep telling people that that's my phrase. This is real life. And if people come to Hollyball next year, and there might be a comment like, how many of you have been affected by cancer? Almost everyone in the room is going to raise their hand, because it is happening to more and more people. And as the older we all live, the odds are probably greater and greater that it's going to happen. And a great phrase that a friend of ours gave us with our cancer journey is that cancer can be a small c. I mean, when you hear the word cancer for the first time,
Feels like a big C.
It feels like a big C, capital letters, bold, underline, and because especially, if you've grown up and you had, grandparents 40 years ago die of certain cancers, it's just not that way anymore. I mean, now there's incredible treatments that can make it happen. But at the time you're told, it is a scary big deal. Again, when I was a patient and I had PET scans and I'm going into my oncologist and I'm looking on a computer screen at my body, it didn't look like my body. I thought I was looking at some medical journal because in my personal situation, it's not this way for everybody. I wasn't sick and I wasn't in pain. My cancer was caught because of a normal yearly physical exam.
Wow.
My family doctor had to get me connected with all the specialists. But when we saw, after my PET scan, in my particular cancer journey, all of the cancer that I have shows up in white, and it looked like the 4th of July. It was from my neck down to my groin. It was everywhere. And my wife tells the story that at that moment, I got glossed over. I wasn't listening to anything anymore. And that's where, as a caregiver, she went into high gear.
Yep.
She had to take over. She had to listen. Okay, what's next? And all, because I just kept looking at the computer screen going, that can't be me.
That's not me.
That can't be me. What's going on? And you start hearing a whole bunch of things, and there's so many people that you have to meet with, and they start coming your way. It is a challenging time. So the Coburn Cancer Center and the Coburn Healing Center, they know that. I mean, I still to this day can't get over the fact that on my second appointment at the Coburn Cancer, you walk in the front door and the person at the desk from 20 feet away, 30 feet away, "Good morning, Larry." They know my name. Now, I'm sure there's some technology there. They got my picture. I don't know. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
But
fantastic.
It feels so comforting to walk in. And it's a beautiful room and there's a beautiful fireplace and you're sitting there waiting. And they just they just make the whole waiting room as comfortable as they can make it. And then every staff I met, from the nurses that have this difficult job to explain what is now going to be injected in your body, and they're doing it so professionally, so calmly. I just really started to respect everybody behind the scenes that works in that type of situation. So it's important. And whether I tell that story at my Hollyball or it's through video, whatever it is, but the idea is that this is real stuff. And it's important to keep the survivor rate. I mean, the fact that I'm a 6-year survivor is amazing to me, because at the time, I didn't necessarily feel that. Even though other people are probably telling me, "Larry, you're going to be fine. We've got this." But at the time, when you're going through it, it's a big deal.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of Hollyball again, and to, just be a part of such a great cause. And it'll be fun to kind of see you at the helm of it and see what you do with it, and how you take and kind of steward the good thing that has been kind of created before you, and then how you kind of make it your own too. It'll be a fun thing to see. I got a really quick question for you. You had said Sertoma Club.
Yes.
What is a Sertoma Club?
Good question. Sertoma stands for Service to Mankind.
Okay.
I have been a member since November of 1990. So
right after you got married.
Yeah. I came into town.
Get married. Sign up for Sertoma.
I was in a job at the Best Western Americana Inn as food and beverage director, and I was setting up for this thing called Sertoma Club. And I'm like, I didn't know what it was. And a person walked in, invited me to actually listen to what they're talking about that day. But we are a service club, and I always say similar to a Kiwanis, an Optimus, a Rotary. There's lots of different organizations, and we all kind of have our own little niche. But our Sertoma Club meets weekly, and it's just a group of people that get together weekly. We hear a little community program, but we raise money. And 100% of the money that we raise goes back to the community. So the dues that we pay are not for our sponsorships. That's basically for our food and stuff. And our niche is to help people primarily who are deaf or hard of hearing through support at camps. It's called Camp Sertoma. And here's a camp that any deaf or hard of hearing child can go to at no charge. They just have to get there. Well, we raise money to support those children. So it's like $750 for a week. And we will raise as much money as we can to send as many kids to camp. And we've helped many, many other organizations, because it's not just about that. We will help veterans issues and youth advocacy issues and just different things that we do. So it's just a group of people that get together every week. We're a small little club of like 45 members. And
cool.
And that's how, so getting back to the Hollyball one night, that was a fundraising idea that we had. And like I said, they didn't pay us. We just did it for tips, to do that. So
and the tips went to...
The tips went to our Sertoma sponsorship fund, which then helped people get hearing aids or go to camp or whatever it is. And now we have our own event every year called Comedy Night. And we make as big of an event as we can, and we try to get as many people as we can to come support. And it's a family-friendly comedian, and they just laugh, and we raise money. And
when is Comedy Night?
When is Comedy Night? It is April 15th, I believe. It's a Friday night. I believe it's April 15th of 2025. And
people can get tickets? And...
Oh, yeah. Well, and it will eventually, any Sertoma can sell tickets. And we have a website, St. Cloud Area Sertoma Club, and you can go in there and buy tickets. It's held at the Park Event Center. And
when it goes live, you should make sure to remember. I'd love to come and grab some tickets and come and support you guys.
Oh, terrific.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
All right, my last question. What is your favorite of the 7 habits? What's your favorite habit of Stephen Covey's seven habits of highly effective people?
Well, it's you heard it going through the leadership program. Begin with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. It's too easy to get bogged down in a whole bunch of details, but if you just keep thinking about what's the end goal, what's the end of today, what are we ultimately trying to do, begin with the end in mind, and then start figuring out how to get there. Yeah. I've been teaching this lesson for literally 25, 30 years, and I have to be the student to myself, because it's hard. Especially for people that are more of visionary people, it's all the little details. You hear phrases in sports like, there's a starting pitcher and the reliever that comes in and finishes the task. Mm-hmm. And any organization has to have those. Yep. And I get bogged down in the little details. They're not as enjoyable to me. Mm-hmm. And then they get stacked up. It's the little details that are really easy to do. Mm. But when there's a lot of them, then I don't do any of them. Yeah. And it's like, oh my, what am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. Where as long as I just keep thinking about what the end goal is. I had a phrase for so long, and I still use it. I mean, when you think about tasks in life, and I always think about what's the worst case scenario right now. If I do something that causes divorce, that's a bad deal, and I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Or death. I mean, it's just everything else is just kind of it's not that it's important, small. But it's just it's a small thing. Yeah. But sometimes that is a curse to me because I'll miss a deadline. If something's due Friday at 5, Monday morning at 8. Speaking of volleyball, my vision board was due last Friday. All right. I might not have done it yet. For the future, but I can see it. Yeah. What's going to happen on December 6th of 2025? Mm-hmm. I can see it now. Yeah. But there are great people at the CentraCare Foundation that are like, "Come on, Larry. Yeah. We need some details."
At work, do you have an integrator? I mean, you're clearly the visionary, right? Yeah. Not just because you own it, but like just seeing how you're wired. Is there someone at work that kind of holds that role and subsequently the reins a little bit?
Of course, there are people that help, but my company has changed so much through time, especially with cancer. Mm. And I went from having 130 employees in a 24-hour day operation, and I built a whole new corporate headquarters. And then suddenly cancer comes into my life. It's like, woo, this isn't going to work. Yeah. And I sold one portion of my company. Mm-hmm. It happened to be the biggest portion of biggest revenues, biggest expenses, biggest headaches.
Biggest in all the ways.
But now I'm a smaller company. I only have about 25 to 30 employees. Mm-hmm. And I've really got into a rhythm of thinking, you know what? Being a small business owner but profitable is better than busy and never knowing if I'm going to even make any money or not. Yeah. So we're in a rhythm right now, and I'm going to be 62 next week. And so I'm not as risky as I was as a young entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So I think about things differently. But yes, I miss those days I used to have a very large leadership team where you could delegate certain things to, and they would just get done. And now I don't have as many people to do that. Sure. I mean, tomorrow morning I came here before I washed a bus. Yeah. And it's going out tomorrow on a 12-hour event, and I'm the one that has to wash the bus tomorrow morning and now mop the floors because I didn't get to it today. Because, did I want to do that? I wanted to come and talk to you.
Well, I'm thankful you came.
But, as an owner, you know what I mean? You're the one that's left to do a lot of those types of things.
Yep. I mean, over the years, I have felt so many of those similar kinds of, kind of feeling the little angst about some of those things. And by God's grace, a feller by the name of Taylor Firo, about a decade ago, got dropped into my life, and Taylor's the integrator here in our little world, and absolutely positively couldn't do it without him. And it's having him, and really, he's been with us for a long time, but him, really in the last handful of years stepping into that role, it's allowed me to kind of push into things that I'm good at in a new kind of way, because there's someone standing next to me who can turn those ideas into tasks and help plug holes and pick up things that I missed. And so,
good for you. Keep together.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a sole business owner. I've never had a partner, and there's good and bad to that.
For sure.
But wow, there's a lot of times I wish I had a partner that understood versus sometimes an employee who, okay, fine, I'll do the task because you're telling me to. So yeah, you can do more.
You can.
With people. And so good luck with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, Larry, we close every podcast with an unpaid ad. Is there someone, something, or some idea that you would like to plug here today?
I have to have two.
All right.
I'll take two, because one is about personal volunteerism and the importance of the community. And then the other is we're, as business owners, we got to talk about that. So the first thing is I have been so blessed in life because of volunteerism. If you really go into volunteerism with the idea that I'm going to help this group, this service club, this organization, because it's a really great idea to help the community, things happen better for you a lot. You get business and you do things. The people that go into things because they say, I'm going to grow my business if I get involved in this, it's not going to work. Yeah. You're in it for the wrong reason. So for anybody, any of your listeners that if they've ever been questioning, we're still kind of in the new year of thinking of new ideas, resolutions, whatever, say yes. When someone asks you to get on a committee or to help out, just say yes. You brought up Sertoma originally, or a little bit ago. One of my dear friends, his name is Bob Nickel. He died at age 103. I was golfing with him when he was 99. Now, he died about 4 or 5 years ago. But in 1958, someone from Minneapolis said to Bob Nickel, we would like to start a Sertoma club in St. Cloud. Will you do it? And he said yes.
Without knowing anything about it.
He didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But he said yes.
That's cool.
And now hundreds and hundreds of people have volunteered for Sertoma, and we have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars since 1958 and helped the community because Bob said yes.
Cool.
So you never know what you can do, but you got to say yes. So just say yes to some community organization and go with it. Engage and be involved. As a business owner, my company is Executive Express, and we provide transportation relaxation. And a few years ago, when we started doing this thing called Black Car Service, we have this phenomenal thing where we have affiliates all over the world. We all are using the same software. And literally, our company's been around now for 50 years. We used to think that if someone called us and they made a reservation to go to the airport in Minneapolis, we've done our job and we're like, hey, we got a customer. Well, when you fly out of Minneapolis, there's this novel thing. Get this. You're flying somewhere and you're going to land. Well, you need to get from the airport to wherever you're going. And one of the really cool things that we do now is we really are a full service transportation company. So if you're flying to a conference in Philadelphia and we provide Black Car Service for you down to Minneapolis, we also can help you when you land in Philadelphia.
That's cool.
We will have a professional chauffeur waiting for you when you land, and we're going to take you to your conference all over the world.
Fun.
So it's been fun to help people when they've landed in Paris or wherever, and we just take care of them. Yeah. But most people don't know that we do that.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to explain in a 30-second radio ad. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My unpaid ad for the day, even though it's kind of what the podcast was about, but it's for Holyball.
Yes.
And I think that from what I knew about Holyball before going into it, I would have said, I think it's cool. I think they raise money for great causes. You should think about getting involved. But now having seen it and been a part of it, I think that you should go. I think you should put it on your calendar. Just go Google it right now. Yeah. When is Holyball? Put it on your calendar. Give yourself a reminder for October, November, or whenever the tickets go on sale to jump in. And it's a really, really fun night and good will be done. So I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Larry. Really, really fun to see you again and to hear a little bit more about your story.
Thank you. My pleasure.